The horizon smoldered with the last embers of day, a sky torn between fire and dusk, as if the heavens could not decide whether to burn or to sleep. The departing train left a lonely whistle behind, vanishing into the barren sprawl where desert met sky. Dust curled like ghostly fingers around the platform, and in that unsettled quiet stood Silas McGraw, a cowboy marked by years of wandering without anchor. His hat brim shadowed a face carved by sun and solitude, his boots scuffed from trails that led nowhere. He might have drifted on as always, another forgotten shadow swallowed by the road, but something unseen pinned his feet to the earth. On the steps of the station sat a woman, hands folded, posture upright though her body carried the heaviness of distance traveled. Her hair, dark as crow feathers, spilled in a loose braid over her shoulder, strands lifted by the desert wind. Her dress bore the fatigue of long miles, yet she sat as though she were carved from the earth itself, resilient and unyielding. Her name was Naya Running Deer, though Silas had yet to know it. She gave no greeting, no plea, only an unspoken gravity that pulled him toward her. Something in the way she held the silence made him wonder, for the first time in years, if he was not the loneliest soul in that town. He cleared his throat, words rough with disuse. "Miss, train leave you behind?" The sound barely held against the wind, and he regretted it instantly, for it seemed clumsy and small against her stillness. Naya lifted her gaze, eyes steady, deep as river water at night. She did not speak, only inclined her head the slightest fraction, as if confirming the obvious while testing the weight of the man before her. The quiet between them lengthened, taut, carrying more meaning than 100 words could have. Silas felt his chest tighten, the urge to step away battling the strange desire to linger, as if the choice he made in that moment would echo far beyond the night. With an awkward motion, he unhooked the canteen at his side and held it out. For a moment she hesitated, then accepted, her fingers brushing against his, brief, yet enough to spark a current that rattled him to his bones. She drank sparingly, her movements graceful despite the wear of travel, then returned the canteen with a small nod. He found himself studying the strength in her hands, hands that told of labor, of storms weathered and endured. He did not ask the questions that pressed against his lips. Where had she come from? Who had left her here? What shadows did she carry? Curiosity pulsed through him like heat, but the silence between them had already become fragile, a thing too precious to shatter with blunt inquiry. The night unfolded above them, stars igniting one by one until the desert sky became a cathedral of light. The emptiness of the land pressed in, vast and merciless. Silas shifted his boots in the dust, torn between walking away and the pull that bound him to this woman's presence. His voice came low, reluctant, almost reverent. "Ain't got a place to stay, do you?" This time she met his gaze fully, and something in that long, quiet look held him steady, as though she were weighing the worth of his soul. She did not answer, yet her silence was not refusal, it was expectation, a waiting that seemed to ask whether he was brave enough to follow his own offer. "Ride back with me," he said at last, surprising himself. The words leapt from his chest without thought, instinct sharper than reason. He half expected her to turn away, to let him walk back to his hollow cabin alone. But Naya rose from the steps, her form silhouetted against the lantern glow, and stood before him without hesitation. She carried no baggage save herself, and perhaps that was burden enough. Silas led his horse forward, gesturing with a hand that trembled more than he cared to admit. She mounted behind him with the ease of one accustomed to travel, and they set off into the open dark, saying nothing more. Their silence grew into a shared tongue, fragile and unbroken, woven from the steady rhythm of hoofbeats beneath the starlit sky. The desert night wrapped around them, wind laced with sage and the faint, elusive scent of rain. Each hoof-fall seemed to echo against Silas's ribs, where nerves tangled with longing he dared not name. The warmth of her presence behind him unsettled and steadied him all at once, a reminder of how long he had lived without another soul close enough to feel. He wondered if she could sense the unevenness of his breath, if she noticed the way he gripped the reins as though balance itself depended on it. Above them, stars stretched infinite, bearing silent witness to this strange, quiet union forged out of dust and chance. In time, the outline of Silas's cabin broke the horizon, lantern light flickering weakly in the dark. Pride and shame rose together in his throat as they drew near. The place was sturdy but bare, no more than wood and roof, smelling faintly of smoke and weather. It was a home shaped by solitude, not hospitality. When Naya dismounted, she paused, taking in the structure with an expression unreadable yet thoughtful, as though she were measuring not the walls but the man who lived within them. Silas held his breath, bracing for judgment, but she only followed him to the door, her silence softer now, almost like acceptance. Inside he lit a fire, its crackle filling the empty cabin with the first sound of warmth. Shadows danced along the walls, making the space less hollow than it had seemed moments before. He pulled a blanket from the shelf and held it out, his hands rough and awkward. She took it with a nod, wrapping it over her shoulders, the flicker of gratitude showing in her softened gaze. He sank into his lone chair, watching the flames instead of her, afraid that if he met her eyes, he might find truths he was unready to carry. Questions coiled inside him, restless and unspoken. Who she had left behind, what path had led her here, but he dared not press them into the night. As the hours thinned and the fire dwindled to embers, Silas lay awake on his cot, listening to the rhythm of her breathing from across the room. It was a sound so simple, yet it shifted the air, turning the space into something more alive than it had been in years. He stared at the ceiling, tracing the shadows, and realized the world had already shifted under him, not with thunder or roar, but with the quiet certainty of a river reshaping stone. Tomorrow would bring change, of that he was sure, but for the first time in longer than he could recall, he did not dread the dawn. He closed his eyes with a restless hope, wondering what might take root in the silence they now shared.